What a way to kick it off. I'm so excited to keep the show going with Keia and Susie. Michelle was just talking about growth, and my first question to you all is about growth. I mean, the WNBA and Formula One, Formula Academy have exploded the last few years in growth. Give me the state of sports as you see it now in your world.
Well, first off, wonderful to be here with all of you, and there's not ever a question that doesn't start with growth when you talk about women's basketball right now, and I could not be more excited and proud for where our sport is, particularly here, the franchise in New York. Growth has been the name of the game. It was always our aspiration. We sort of came into our newest phase as a franchise in Barclays Center in Brooklyn with growth on our minds. The acceleration and the speed at which it happened is incredibly exciting, but it's in every single facet of the brand health, from attendance to partnership support. The fan base is growing at a rapid rate. The viewership is growing at a really rapid rate. Merchandise sales, I mean, you name it, when you think about the business of sport, and it's the thing we always were thriving for, that this would be looked at truly as a business. And we're so incredibly happy and proud to be here now. And I think when you ask about the state of that, I look at this as our new normal. This is where we are, and I'm not certain it will be triple, percentage growth across the board in perpetuity, but moving in the right direction, in a positive direction, is everything that we're thriving to do and where we want to be.
Wow, and Susie, Formula One it's always been popular across the world, but America is having such a moment, whether it's the Drive to Survive, the Miami Formula One is now like the US Open and the Super Bowl combined. Tell me about, and what you're doing with Academy, tell me about the state of the Formula One Academy for women drivers, but just Formula One as a brand in general.
Sure. Well, good morning, everyone. You're probably all thinking, did they coordinate? We didn't. But great minds think alike.
Great minds think alike.
I left my brown suit it was in the dry cleaners, otherwise.
We both looked at each other this morning and went, oh, you look great, oh, you look great. It's wonderful to be here, and on the topic of Formula One, I mean, how lucky we are that the sport has just exploded in the US. One of the differences between WNBA and motorsport is the fact that we're not segregated. Women can compete with men in motorsport. So then you might ask, well, why aren't there more? And I think that comes down to a couple of factors. There's not enough competing. The global license holders of any form of motorsport, it's never gone above 5%. So if you don't have enough young girls racing, it's very difficult for the best to rise to the very top. And that in turn goes down to the fact that we just don't have strong role models for these young girls. Who do they look to when they switch on a Grand Prix? There's no women on the grid. But luckily for me, Formula One became so popular, and 42% of the global fan base is female. The fastest growing fan demographic in Formula One, the 18 to 24-year-old female. So when Liberty approached me a few years ago and said, listen, we see this boom in our female fan base, we want to do something. We want to create something which gives opportunity, which breaks down the preconception that it's a man's world, and the concept of F1 Academy was born. And originally it raced on its own with no crowds, and I arrived and thought, okay, we need to be on the biggest global stage in the world. We need to race with Formula One just before the Grand Prix starts. And we need to take all the commercial assets in-house and bring on brilliant brand partners that can help us build something. And now suddenly when you come to a Grand Prix, you can see a young 18-year-old girl zipping up a Ferrari race suit and jumping in what looks like a miniature Ferrari Formula One car. So I'm only in my year 2, but we're already seeing the huge impact of being able to transform what belongs in motorsport and also tap into this really big fan base of females who can now resonate with what they see on screen and think that, well, okay, this sport that I love, there's a place for me in this sport.
I love it. You mentioned, role models, and both, WNBA and Formula One are all about star power. Like, how are you using the talent on your teams and also the new media, whether it's amazing TV deals, whether it's Netflix documentaries, whether it's, social media? Like, tell me about the power of star power.
Yeah, the star power in our league, especially because faces are so visible in basketball, and I think it had often been the barrier to how people looked at women's sports and their notoriety. Do you know the players? Can you name the players? And now there are so many who are on a global stage, so many with their own signature shoes, with national television commercials. And I think whether they play for my team or on other teams, that's lifting the profile of everyone at this time. We're really fortunate, 2 of the 5 players who have those signature shoes and a lot of advertising and marketing power behind them play for our team. And just having the momentum and the ability to not just ride the coattails, but really to tell a bold story about who they are as both athletes, but also as people, has been the special sauce that's, I think, really propelled us in the last couple of years. You pair that with innovation. You mentioned technology, redoing apps. We redid our app locally, the first team to be in a direct-to-consumer streaming platform with Liberty Live. Introducing loyalty programs for our fan base. These are all things that we need infrastructure and people to really buy into. And the early adopters and female-skewed audience, they're ripe for it. They want to know more and see more and learn more about who the women are, but also the X's and O's and what's happening with, who's, ahead in the standings and et cetera, et cetera. So we're able to play in all of those buckets in a really meaningful way right now, but certainly there has been a catalyst in the college athlete transferring to the professional landscape. And we've shepherded that, I think, in a lot better way. We've had superstars before who were at the college level and came into the WNBA, but this time around, there was just a seamless transfer and just a really, really intense audience that followed them. So we're, just trying to control it, contain it, make sure that we're utilizing every single one of the levers that we can pull to ensure that the fan is getting what they're seeking from us.
That's great. And Susie, some of the top Formula One drivers in the world are among the most famous, well-paid athletes in the world, and they're all men. And you mentioned that women can compete, they can legally, obviously enter that league. Is there a plan to kind of have that, create that woman driver? And what would that mean for the league? And is there like an active, obviously Academy are doing that, but what's the path towards that?
Well, our sports are very different in that you see the athletes on court. Our athletes, they wear helmets. So actually out on track, you don't know if it's a man or a woman that's racing. All that matters is performance. But to get a woman to Formula One, that's going to be tough because it's tough to get to Formula One regardless of your gender. There's 20 spots on that grid. It's the pinnacle of the sport, and it's not easy. So I think this ideal of us getting a woman to Formula One, yes, we'd love to think it's going to happen. Everyone asks me, how long is it going to take? But I definitely hope that in the next 5 to 10 years, we see more and more young women progressing up in the sport and showing that it is possible. But that's only going to happen if we get it down into the grassroots level. And that means also connecting with the parents of the next generation, because an 8-year-old girl can't drive herself to a go-kart track. And it also means we need to change the perceptions of the parents, because a lot of parents say, well, my daughter's not going to race. I'll put her on a horse, but I won't put her in a go-kart. If you ask me, horses are way more dangerous. I at least have a throttle and a brake. But I think, I of course come up into situations and in meetings where people say, well, we don't think it's possible, it's so difficult. But I drove a Formula One car. I drove it. I did a race distance with the Williams Formula One team. So I know it's possible. And I know the barriers that are in place that we have to break down in order to get a woman there. But I think we exist for something much more, because just by having F1 Academy, by having Hello Sunshine, create our docuseries for Netflix, we're changing the perceptions of the sport. And of course, it's very difficult for me to have the data points. Well, how are we changing? What are the real numbers? But I feel it. I see more people, and mostly women, at the racetrack. Whenever I go to a kart track now, all these little girls come up to me and say, remember my name, I'm going to be racing in F1 Academy in 10 years. So their mindsets change because suddenly they have something to aim for. But we're still at a junior level. At F1 Academy, it's not the big star power that the Formula One drivers have, but they come onto our grid. They support our drivers. And I think slowly but surely, you'll see that the movement will come more and more where it just becomes normal. It's not talked about anymore, male or female.
I just want to say, you bring up a really great point. We've talked about the differences between, your sport and basketball, but even in a traditional sport like basketball, the attention to the next generation and to having instruction and opportunities to meet youth where they are is still just as important for us as we go into our 30th year as a league. We're super excited that we're going to be opening the first, at least here in New York, brick and mortar training facility dedicated to youth here in a couple weeks. And I think that's incredibly important. Thank you. And that's joint Brooklyn Nets and New York Liberty. Brooklyn basketball, as its nomenclature, is really focused on not just creating the next player that's going to be at the pro level either. I think there are so many great attributes that come from learning to play sport and being in sport, whether you go pro or not. It's the character building, it's the self-esteem, it's keeping young ladies engaged at a really pivotal point in their lives. But I think doing the work, it's just inspiring for me to know that we're all sort of doing that work and sort of reaching back and wanting to be, the next 30 years, the next 50 years, the next 100 years is super important.
Yeah, it's interesting because with both your businesses, you're mixing mission with money. I mean, yes, you have this big mission of inclusion and propelling, female athletes into areas that used to be male-dominated, but you're also running businesses. And you need to make money and your business people yourselves. How do you kind of balance that mission and profit?
For me, it really starts with the North Star being, the key constituent. It is the player. They deserve this platform. They're the best in the world at what they do. And then we hold on to that. It's just sort of a domino effect, and it is good business. It's good business to be in the business of women's sports right now. And I think for a long time there wasn't that belief system, but you can never negate that these women are the best at what they do and they deserve. It's entertaining. It's competitive, it's worthwhile for investment, and not just from the fan. I think strategic partnerships play a major role in that, and we're talking about the youth sector, but even in the corporate space, ways in which we can lock arms and have commonality in what a Fortune 500 company is trying to accomplish and the audience that we deliver, but also this belief system, this inspiration that the athletes themselves are. All of those things play into each other, and it's made this really fun over the last 5 or 6 years after, we had a history of not being able to deliver eyeballs in viewership or butts in seats. Now that's sort of, I won't say thrown out the window, it's there, but because that growth has now occurred, we can get down to brass tacks. We can talk about what is actually meaningful to a partner that we can do both in arena and in the community, and I think that's where that mix feels authentic, it feels organic. We're mostly servicing women on our side from a fan base standpoint in arena, but we're at 50-50 on viewership. So then it becomes, how are we really pulling levers that make people have different consumer behaviors that drive, whatever the partner's mission is as well. So really complex, in a place that we always wanted to be, and super excited to continue that.
I think there's one word you said where I really leaned in, and that's partnerships. Mm-hmm. Because Formula One has normally had a lot of brands that have been in for years, the tire supplier, the engine supplier, the fuel supplier. But I was lucky enough that Liberty gave a lot of investment initially to get F1 Academy up and running. And I thought, okay, I need to disrupt. I need to do things differently and not just go after the big dollars, but figure out ways that brands could come in and really help me reach a new audience. And we managed to get the Formula One teams on board. Now, that was a huge moment for us because those 10 Formula One teams, soon to be 11, they'd never given their name or livery to anything outside the cars they'd built. But suddenly they were willing to do it for an all-female series. So I think that showed the commitment we had from the sport. But then I suddenly had 8 liveries to sell. And the easiest would have been to go to all the brands already in the sport. But what became the biggest brand partnership announcement in motorsport in 2024 was one of our brand partners, Charlotte Tilbury, because I really wanted a makeup brand in our sport. I wanted to show you don't need to be a tomboy to be in racing. You can't be judged on whether you have a face full of makeup or not as to whether you're a good racing driver or not. It comes down to the individual. And actually, I think a lot of us share the same opinion in this room. If I look good and feel good, I'm 9 times out of 10 going to do a better job So we really worked hard to bring Charlotte Tilbury in. It was a completely new way of putting together a partnership, but I had the full support of Stefano Domenicali. And there we had it on our first race, a livery with Charlotte's hot lips all over it. And it made magazine covers, it got people talking, and that for us was the start of the momentum to say, we're going to disrupt, we're going to do it differently. And now, of course, other brands have come on board. But those brands, when I pitched to them, I was just selling a vision. I said, but you can come on board and you can help build what this is. And I think because of the big momentum in women's sport, PepsiCo with Gatorade, they said, we're coming on board not because your numbers are where we think they need to be, but because we know we can help you grow. And we're just as committed to supporting you as we are F1. And that's definitely accelerated how quickly we've managed to build momentum.
I was going to ask about the cars, because you were saying how your athletes are covered with helmets and you can't see their faces, and your biggest deal was a makeup brand. So that's very creative marketing. I like that.
Well, you can see the eyes.
The eyes, okay.
We all know what we can do with good eye makeup.
A lot of eyeliner deals. You're all set. I want to talk about grassroots and leadership, because what's fascinating. Both of your stories are both of you came up from you were literally behind the wheel of a cart. And Keia, you've had every job at the Liberty, I think, besides maybe strong forward. So I love how what is your experiences from doing all these different jobs in being operators to now running these companies? Tell me about that power and experience.
Yeah, it's allowed me to be a leader that can really have a POV where I'm leading with empathy and understanding. And talent means everything. The people are what makes this go. Although I get to be with all of you today and talk about this business and talk about the team and talk about growth, there's just this powerhouse of folks who are so keenly, really focused on trying to propel us to the next level, trying to make sure that we are in every conversation, that we're taken seriously, but it took time for us to actually attract top talent in this league, and I think that's the piece that I hang on to most, but it's the piece that is so near and dear to me, because I felt like one of the few people who wanted to work in women's sports for my entire career. I wasn't setting out to do that. It'll be nearly 20 years that I'm in the WNBA next season, but we needed top talent in women's sports. We need top talent in women's sports. And I think maybe a decade or so ago, it was often looked at as a stepping stone, as the place that you would start so that you could get your job on the men's side, or you can move on to a corporate brand. And I think now there's this notion of this is where you can be really comprehensive and complex about how you are a marketer or a strategist, or, are you figuring out the big solutions? And all of that opportunity lies here. So I think it gives me a leg up just having been mostly on the marketing track, and marketing is a very important part of how our brand comes to life, obviously, but also understanding the ticket mix process, understanding how partnerships are forged and how assets are built and how you create and innovate assets even if you don't have all of the audience just yet. And I think those things have helped me, but mostly it's just in the tutelage of how I lead. Not that I'm going to get in the driver's seat on every single one of those tasks or roles, but really it's about having a vision and a goal that's both vertical based but also holistically based.
By the way, thanks for the segue with driver's seat. Susie, you were in the driver's seat.
We're on the same team.
Same team.
We came
I
in
like
a
that.
uniform.
Like ESP.
We are just on the same wavelength this morning.
Yeah, but Susie, you were risking your life on the track for decades as a competitor, and now you're running the track. How has that previous experience shaped what you do now?
Massively, and I feel so grateful to be in a position of being able to set something up like F1 Academy, because if I think back to 18-year-old Susie, how I would have loved such an opportunity. And I think part of being able to make it easier for the next generation, and when I use the word easier, I mean, it's still tough, but all the barriers I faced, all the difficult moments, I can make sure that it's better for the next generation, because I know what they're going through. And I'm quite often at a racetrack and I see these young women, and I know exactly the challenges they're up against, and I know what we can do to make it just that little bit easier and set them up for success. And then obviously going on to run my own team, I understand what it's like from the other side, from the business perspective. So I think definitely the experiences have put me in this situation where I feel I can speak with an authority, because I'm quite often in a room and I'm listening to all these men talking, and I can tell immediately, by the way, if a man has a daughter or not. definitely changes their opinion on the table. But sometimes I have to say, well, there's no women around this table. Have any of you actually ever driven a racing car? And quite often they say no. And I say, well, I'm a woman first and foremost, and I have driven a racing car. So let me tell you, these are the points we need to focus on. But there's a lot of good intention, but for sure, having been in the driver's seat, having gone through the experience, I feel in a very lucky position to make it better. And the world changed. You know, I was racing 20 years ago, makes me feel really old. But the world has changed, and that means that the sport, F1 had to change with it, and I think that's also given us an environment where so many more people are more supportive to getting female talent on and off track into a better position.
Wow, well, unfortunately out of time, but before we leave, I would like, we'll do a quick one lightning question. I would love a bold prediction from both of you about something happening in the next 5 years in professional women's sports.
International and global presence. I just think we're ripe for it. We're so hyper-focused locally right now, but there's so much opportunity to get team sports in particular in the global space.
Wow, nice.
I think in the next 5 years, it's not going to be special to be a female racing driver anymore. You're going to see people being regarded as drivers, male or female, and not have such a stigma around it being a woman in such a male-dominated sport, because the sport won't be as male-dominated.
Wow, terrific. Well, Keia, Susie, thank you so much. Thank you all so much. Appreciate it.